Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, the Timberwolves have a big opportunity the second half of the season, unofficial second half, post All-Star break. We'll talk about why, but it's a really difficult schedule right out of the break. Also give some takeaways from another intriguing All-Star weekend. It's all coming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Happy Monday, everybody. Happy President's Day to those of you in the U.S. Of course, coming off of All-Star Weekend. We will talk a little bit about it later. This is as light of a Timberwolves participation as I can remember in, I don't know, it seems like forever. Even when the Wolves were bad, they were getting a bunch of guys in the Rising Stars game. And like, I don't know. It's weird with the Anthony Edwards, him sitting out due to the groin injury, last minute scratch on Sunday. All we had was Leonard Miller on Friday night. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll give some overall All-Star Weekend takeaways toward the end of the show today. But I do want to start with some Wolves specific stuff. We'll talk about the schedule coming out of the break and some reasons for optimism. I'll tell you why I think the Wolves have a real shot at ending up with a top 4 seed in the West still. We'll get to that here actually right away today. First, though, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And a reminder, you can subscribe to the daily Locked On Wolves newsletter at lockedondaily.com. One stop for Ultimate Wolves and NBA coverage right to your inbox every day, Monday through Friday. Again, you can sign up at lockedondaily.com. All right. So, ignoring the fact that it was All-Star Weekend for a moment, again, we'll get back to that. Let's talk about the state of the Timberwolves overall. And really, actually, quickly, let me say for the week, I'm going to dig in a little bit deeper on a couple of the topics I'm going to touch on today. So, yes, we'll talk some more schedule. The Wolves don't play again until Friday night. So we got a lot of time to kind of dig in deep. I want to do first, I'm going to keep saying first half. We'll call it pre-All-Star break, even though we're like 2/3 of the way through the actual schedule. I want to do like player grades for the first pre-All-Star portion of the season. I want to dig in on like some of the changes to the offense and the defense, and we'll do some of that with the offense today. So we are going to get a bit more in depth later on in the week. Today, I want to do kind of a higher level. Like, here's some general reasons for optimism based on where the Wolves sit in the standings, based on how they played since the relatively arbitrary, but I think legit date to use of January 1st. Like, since the calendar flipped to 2025, the Wolves have played a lot better, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And we'll talk about the schedule as well. So let's start with kind of just the overall reset of where the Wolves sit right now. So the Timberwolves are 56 games through their 82-game schedule. They played a ton of games pre-All-Star. In fact, more than a lot of other teams on the schedule, in the standings. Like, look at the teams around them. I mean, Dallas is right behind them. They played 56. The Clippers have played 2 less games than Minnesota. They're right before the Wolves in the standings. The Lakers had a couple of postponements mixed in there, of course, due to fires, et cetera, and they've only played 52. But that's kind of messed up the West standings a little bit. And I think that at first glance, it's like, the Wolves are in 7th, but they're only 2, but I mean, they have the same number of wins as the Clippers, who are in 6th. They're only 2 games behind them in the loss column, so they're officially a game behind. They've got a better win differential. They've played 4 more games than the Lakers, is that right? 52. Yeah, I guess that's right. They've played 4 more games than the Lakers. They're only 3 games behind them in the standings, and they have a significantly better point differential than the Lakers. Houston, the Wolves just beat, and Houston's on a bit of a downturn. They have lost 7 of their last 10 games. The Wolves only have a slightly worse point differential than Houston. They're only 3.5 games out of the 4 spot with Houston on the decline. Okay. Now, in and of themselves, those are not reasons to be super optimistic. Those are just reasons why, hey, they're in 7th, but they're not that far away from the 4 spot, right? We'll take a half step back and look at how they played since January 1st. And this is something I dug in a bit, I think, middle of last week. It might have been Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. So if you missed it, go back and listen to how I talked about how the Wolves have adjusted their offense. And all they did coming into the All-Star break Wednesday, Thursday last week was kind of further cement what I had talked about on this show. It was probably last Wednesday's show leading into that back-to-back. The Wolves have completely shifted their offensive focus to include a lot more glass crashing. Offensive rebounding is a massive part of what the Wolves are doing right now, which is the opposite of how they played for most of the last season. Well, really season and a half plus. Like this is year 3 with Gobert, right? Like it hasn't been a massive focus of late or prior to lately for Minnesota, prior to the last 6 weeks, really. Along with that, has come an increase in free throw rate. And the crazy thing is, like, you would be worried about how they would perform in transition, but that actually hasn't been a problem since January 1st. The offense since January 1st is 5th in the league in offensive rebound rate, according to Cleaning the Glass, 31.2%. So nearly a third of all shots that go up are being offensive rebound by Minnesota. They're first in free throw rate. They're shooting 21.4 free throws per 100 field goal attempts. So just better than 1 in 5 field goal attempts that they're putting up on the rim. They're getting a free throw attempt. I'm sorry. That's actually, for this free throw rate on Cleaning the Glass, is free throws to the team make, not just attempt, but actually make. So they're first in that free throw rate on Cleaning the Glass since January 1st. More broadly for the season, they're much closer to the middle of the pack, but those are numbers that have gone up significantly. The one thing that hasn't changed, they're still turning the ball over a bunch. But because they're getting themselves so many more opportunities in the offensive glass, and because they're getting to the line so often, that's kind of mitigated those issues. And then you would assume, like, the concern over crashing the glass, and I don't want to double down, or I don't want to not double down. I don't want to spend too much time on this because, again, I did talk about it a lot last Wednesday. I think it was last Wednesday. Go back and listen to that show. But the short version is, the reason why teams haven't crashed the glass, a lot of teams wouldn't, and the Wolves haven't, is because they're more concerned with their transition defense, getting back in transition, and not allowing an easy bucket the other way. But by definition, if you're crashing 5 and the other team is contesting and releasing down the floor, you're going to have a 5-on-4 or maybe even a 5-on-3 to try and get an offensive rebound. And so you've got a better shot at getting the rebound, and then you've got a better shot at scoring against, a lighter group of defenders, because there's 1 or 2 that are contesting and releasing down the floor. And then also, period, even if nobody was contesting and releasing, you've got a better shot at, like, if you actually crash the glass, you're at an advantage. You're facing the rim. You know where the ball's going to go. You have a better shot of tracking it than the defense. And it's already then a broken floor situation without a set defense where you could get fouled. You can get to the rim. You can find an open shooter for 3. Offensive opportunities off of offensive rebounds are always very advantageous. And we talked about, there was a number I cited last week that talked about the Wolves, the points per miss and plays per miss. Like, how many opportunities are they getting per miss shot? And they're first in the league since January 1st. That's just going another layer deeper on this. So what about the transition defense? We know that was a major issue 2 years ago, the first Rudy Gobert season. The transition defense was awful. It was pretty good last year, considering how good they were in the half court. It was still decent. But this year, their overall transition defense, it's 6th best in the league for the season, according to Cleaning the Glass. They're 6th in points per 100 possessions. Since January 1st, they're actually 5th. It hasn't gotten worse. It's actually gotten slightly better. And if you want to look at, like, off of rebounds and stuff, which is mostly what we're talking about, we're not talking about off of steals. Off of live rebounds, the transition defense has been top 10 all season. It's currently 9th points per 100 possessions off of live ball rebounds, transition opportunities off live ball rebounds. And they're only 2nd in frequency, meaning they only allow 23.4% of misses to lead into a transition play. So they're doing a good enough job of avoiding transition opportunities for the opponent, despite crashing the glass. So they're really getting the best of both worlds right now, which means that they have a plan and they're executing it extremely well, which is not something we've said often about this team this year, or the last couple of years on the offensive, in the half court offensively, or this season, end of game situations, right? Like, everybody wants to blame Chris Finch. And at some point, yeah, if they're not executing, there's some blame there. But credit Chris Finch that their scheme right now to crash the glass, to corner crash, Jaden McDaniels was great at that in the playoffs last year, and he's been doing it again recently. Rudy being more engaged on the offensive glass, Nas being more engaged on the offensive glass, even Anthony Edwards, like, the guards are crashing down and they're giving themselves extra shot opportunities. There was a game like 3 weeks ago that they lost, and I can't remember who it was. It was the Clippers or Rockets or somebody. No, it wasn't the Clippers because they haven't lost to the Clippers. Somebody that had like 15 more shot attempts than them for the game. They flipped the script on that. That, like, by and large, they're attempting more shots than the opposing team. And that's, like, basketball 101, right? The more shots you get, like the more chances you get to make a shot. Obviously, you still got to make them, and we've had some games where the Wolves just haven't made shots. But by and large, that's a good thing. If you're generating more shot opportunities than the opposing team, that means you're not turning it over as much, or you're getting offensive rebounds. And that's been the case absolutely for the Wolves. I want to talk a little bit more about the schedule coming out of the break, and we'll get to the All-Star weekend festivities here in just a moment as well. That's all upcoming next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at Hungry Root. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, I've had an ongoing problem. I don't have time. Between work, life, trying to eat healthier, there's, of course, the podcast, which takes up quite a bit of time, too. It's easy to feel stressed out. You can go to the grocery store, buy the things that you don't actually need, and then end up with no time to actually cook, which is doubling down on that problem. And sticking to your health goals, that makes it even more difficult if you're struggling to get the right ingredients and having time to cook. But everything changed when I discovered Hungry Root. Honestly, it's been a game changer. It's the easiest way to eat healthy without all the stress. With Hungry Root, it's like having a personal shopper and a nutritionist all in one. They take care of my grocery shopping, recommending meals and groceries based on my taste and health goals. From anti-inflammatory to high protein and gluten-free options, it's all on the table with Hungry Root. The best part is that every meal is ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm talking quick, healthy meals that actually taste great, all delivered straight to your door. It's been a huge time saver and can make healthy eating so much simpler. You're going to love Hungry Root as much as I do. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out. All right, so we talked about the Timberwolves' shift in offense and how it's made them that much better since January 1st. It also has not harmed their transition defense. And it's easy to kind of gloss over this and to not see the forest through the trees, if you will. But like since Jan 1, I know that there was this downturn, the bad loss to Cleveland, the loss to Milwaukee, the shorthanded Bucks team when Ant played, but like dudes on the Bucks didn't play, like no Giannis, no Dame. But remember, since Jan 1, they're playing a lot better. They've withstood the injuries to Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo and Ant missing a couple of games. They had the win, or I guess they lost to Washington Sans Ant, but they had the win over OKC, right, on Thursday. So, like, it all kind of balances out. And while it's frustrating that they didn't win some of these games they should have won, they also won a couple of games they probably shouldn't have won either. And overall, this team is trending in the right direction. It's frustrating they're losing close late games. Absolutely. And it is a reflection on late game execution, of course, which means it's somewhat a reflection on the coaching. It's also a reflection on the ability of the players to actually execute late in games. And you look at their losses, the Cleveland loss is the only blowout one. They lost by a bucket to Washington. They lost by a bucket to Sacramento. They lost by a bucket to the Bucks. They lost by a bucket to Memphis. So 4 of their last 5 losses came by 2 points. And if you want to go all the way back to January 15th, which includes 7 losses, 5 of the 7 were by 1 or 2 points. The other 2 were losses to Cleveland, who's by any measure one of the best 3 teams in the entire league this year, probably one of the best 2 teams. Since January 1st, the only game that you would consider a truly bad loss would be the blowout loss at at Detroit. Right? I mean, like losing. Everything else was 1 possession or it was against the Cavaliers. That's it. And sure, you'd love to have beaten Washington. Yes. You would have loved to have beaten Sacramento. Sure. You'd have loved to have beaten Milwaukee without Dame and Giannis. But the point is, the Wolves are in every single game. They're in every single game, regardless of who's been available. And I know there's like this, no matter what you think, not having Julius Randle hurts from a depth perspective, from an offensive option perspective. I know there's things about Julius Randle's game that are frustrating, and there's things that he needs to, approach differently, and there's things that don't necessarily fit with how the Wolves play offensively. And the question of whether or not he's on the team next year and what kind of contract he deserves or might get, that's a whole other conversation that I'm not having today. However, not having Julius Randle hurts the Timberwolves. It does. The only benefit is more opportunities for Naz Reid. But ultimately, that means you're probably going to have more Luka Garza, which, depending on the matchup, may not be the worst thing, but sometimes it is the worst thing. It also means you just have less flexibility, less options. And when the offense grinds to a halt, especially without Anthony Edwards, you miss a guy like Julius Randle. The only guys on this roster that can really, truly create their own offense and strike fear into the heart of the defense with the ball in their hands are Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, Reid. That's it. Like secondarily, you could say Dante DiVincenzo, who's also hurt, and Rob Dillingham, who's a rookie and has not shown the ability to do it consistently. That's kind of it at this point. Does Terrence Shannon have the ability to get there someday? Maybe. But like, and I know Jaden McDaniels has been playing much better. He's had, career high game recently. He scored 27 once. He had another game of 30 for the career high. Like, he's been playing great, but teams are still going to dare him to beat them off the dribble or make threes, especially if Anthony Edwards is banged up, especially with no Julius Randle. The point is Julius Randle is still the second most accomplished scorer on this team next to Anthony Edwards with the ball in his hand. He just is. He's just more dangerous than anybody else. In terms of the schedule, it's very tough for the next couple of weeks. And then they have one of the easiest schedules in the league. In fact, go to tankathon.com. You can look at the most difficult remaining schedule. The Timberwolves have the 5th easiest remaining schedule based on win percentage of any team in the NBA. They still have Utah 3 times. They still have the Pelicans twice, which I think are consecutive games. They have Brooklyn twice, and they have the Sixers twice. They also have Charlotte one more time. In terms of their most difficult games, they have OKC twice, which is immediately after the break. We'll talk about that. They have Denver twice, they have the Pacers twice, and they have some other West opponents once each, Houston, the Lakers, and Memphis. Look at the schedule coming right out of the break. They're at Houston immediately, home for OKC, and then it's a true back-to-back home and home. Home for OKC on this coming Sunday, 6 days from now, and then at OKC the next night. That is as difficult of a home and home, literally, as you could possibly have against the best team in the NBA. Now, I know they just beat OKC, so they've split so far the season series, but it's difficult. So at Houston Friday, home and home against OKC. So 3 of the remaining 7 toughest games are their next 3 games. And then they're at the Lakers, so you can lump that one in. And then it gets a lot easier. So the next week is real tough. If you could split those 4 games, fine. Win at Houston, split the 2 with OKC, and I guess real shot at winning at LA, and maybe win 3 out of 4. But a split 2 out of 2 or 2 out of 4, 2-2 over those 4 games would be fine. And then you go at Utah, at Phoenix, both winnable games. But Phoenix is a playoff team, likely, or a play-in team, I should say. And then a couple more back-to-back. They've got 3 back-to-backs right away, and then they're pretty light on back-to-backs the rest of the season. They've got the 23rd and 24th, then the 27th and 28th, and then the 4th and 5th. And then after that, I think they've only got 1 more back-to-back, 2 more back-to-backs than the rest of the season. Because, again, they've already played 56 games. So they've only got, 26 remaining? And after you get through that stretch, then they're done with OKC, they're done with Houston, and they're done with the Lakers. So you get to February 28th, and the only, really difficult games you have on the schedule are 1 more against Denver and 2 against Indiana. I'm sorry, 2 more against Denver. 2 against Denver, 2 against Indiana. There's a Memphis and there's a Milwaukee in there. But we're talking out of 20 games the rest of the season, the majority of those are against below 500 teams, which I know hasn't always meant wins for this Minnesota team. It really hasn't. It certainly should increase the chances that they win those games, regardless of what their track record has been. So all that to say, the next week out of the break, if they can go 2-2, if they can be 6, maybe 7 games above 500 going into that Utah, Phoenix, Philadelphia, Charlotte stretch. We talked about the standings already. They're only 3.5 out of 4th place with Houston. If they could beat Houston to get the tiebreaker, Houston's on their heels a bit. I know the Lakers long-term should be better after the trade because they have Luka, but who knows with injuries and acclimation and all that stuff. LeBron's been banged up a little bit. The Wolves have the tiebreaker over the Clippers and a better differential. If they beat the Lakers, they'll have the tiebreaker over the Lakers. And they have a much better differential than the Lakers, and they're catching Houston. Sitting here right now, my prediction is that the Wolves end up 4th in the West when it's all said and done in the regular season, and they have a 4-5 matchup against Houston or maybe the Clippers or maybe Dallas if they could figure it out, although probably not with the AD injury. I think that that's where we're headed. I think I shouldn't say that. The most likely scenario is not that they get to the 4 seed. My prediction is that they get to the 4 seed. They're probably in the 5 or 6. That's probably the most likely scenario, but I believe they'll get to 4. I think they're going to continue to improve. They're going to get healthier. their depth is better now because guys like Shannon and Dillingham and Jalen Clark have had to play. So if they need to play in a big game down the stretch of the season or even in the playoffs, they're going to be in much better shape to do so. Not physically, but like, be prepared and be mentally ready to go and have the reps, etc. And DiVincenzo and Randle should be back soon. And they haven't been out so long that I don't think there's going to be like this massive, reacclimation process. I think they'll be all right to be almost pretty plug and play. I like where the Wolves sit right now, given everything they've been through the season and the weeping and gnashing of teeth over how frustrating the season started. We're talking about a team that's only 3.5 games out of the 4 spot in the Western Conference. With a week from now, or a week and a half from now, they'll have a very favorable schedule over the last 22 games of the season. All right, let's close by giving some thoughts on All-Star Weekend. I do have some thoughts. I thought it was interesting. There were some pros and some cons. We'll put it that way. So we'll get to all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at FanDuel. Our title sponsors are at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using live betting. It's a ton of fun. It was fun during the Super Bowl. It's fun during the NBA too. I not as much All-Star Weekend, but now that real games are starting to get on Thursday, it keeps every moment of the game excited. If you're backing the Wolves, it's a late game rally, which, the Wolves tend to find themselves down a lot coming back. Maybe you like what that live betting line looks like, or maybe you just think Ant's going to hit a clutch 3. You'll never feel like you missed your chance because it's all there at FanDuel. The app is so easy to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, NBA All-Star Weekend. So, format change. We had the Rising Stars Challenge tournament on Friday night. Leonard Miller was on the G League team, and they won their first game. I'm going to go through this chronologically for the weekend, and then I'll kind of give my top level, kind of a studs and duds, I guess, like I would do for a post-game pod. Leonard Miller was great. He actually led the team in scoring in their first round game. They beat Team M. They were down like 6 or something, and Leonard Miller scored, I think, he didn't hit the game winner. I think he scored 6 of their last 12 points or something like that. Like as they were making their comeback, Leonard Miller did a bunch of scoring, and he finished leading the team in scoring. I have the box score here somewhere. I think he had 12. I had 14 points on 7 of 9. His only 2 misses were threes. He had a couple floaters in the lane and then some dunks. He had 7 rebounds, tied for the team lead in rebounds, and played the most minutes. He played did he play the entire game? It's tough to tell because there's no clock. Yeah, he played the entire game. Leonard Miller never sat in the first game of the Rising Stars Challenge on Friday night. He actually looked really good. Shouldn't be surprised. That's the sort of format he would be comfortable with, kind of just running and dunking and being athletic. Had a nice block in the championship game. They lost the championship game pretty significantly to Team C, which ended up being Team Candace Parker, headed into Sunday. And I don't think he sat. Yeah, he played that entire game too. He shot just 2 of 7 from the field, made a 3, also blocked a 3, had a couple of blocks in that second game, but just didn't shoot the ball as well. He tried to launch more threes, didn't work out. Of course, they won their first game on the clutch 3 to get them to 40 points. Oh my goodness, I'm blanking. What's it called? I can't think of what it's called now. The Elam ending. Bryce McGowan's hit that clutch 3 off of a screen from Leonard Miller, a play call by their coach, Jeremy Lin, called timeout to get them that shot. Nice shot from McGowan's that led him to the championship, and they lost pretty easily or pretty handily in that championship. But Leonard Miller looked good. It was too bad he didn't get a chance to play on Sunday. Mac McClung did not look all that great in these games, and he started the first game, and they did a lot of stuff through him. He played less in the championship game, and of course that led into Saturday, which Saturday started with the skills competition, and the Spurs. I don't need to say much about that other than it's the funniest thing ever that happened to Chris Paul, who's always trying to bend the rules to fit him the best. Like, of course, Wolves fans, everybody remembers the delay of game Jordan Bell play at OKC a few years ago when Chris Paul played for the Thunder. And the Wolves got called for a delay of game because Jordan Bell tried to enter the game with his jersey untucked, which is exactly like, it's the most Chris Paul thing for that to happen. And then for him to try and circumvent the rules. And I know Wemby tried to say it was his idea. Who knows? In that situation, Chris Paul is the one who is either it's his idea or he's cool with going along with it. And that's why they did it. If you missed it, not actually shooting the ball as part of the skills challenge, because there is, and it's on the NBA for not having the rule that you have to make the shot. You just need to attempt 3 shots. I know that years ago they had the skills challenge where you had to make a shot, and it just ended up with dudes standing there missing and missing and missing and missing, and guys probably didn't want to do that. But there's got to be somewhere in between. Like maybe there's a penalty if you don't make the shot, like a I don't know, 5-10 second penalty or something on your time for the game or for the obstacle course. Anyway, they tried to circumvent the rules. They got disqualified, which is hilarious. I don't have any other comments on that. It's always fun to watch it, but it's just a whatever event. The 3-point competition, and of course, Ant was in it last year and tried to play left-handed, which did not go well. And Kat won it the year when it was big men versus guards. So that was fun. 3-point contest was fun. It didn't feel as fun as the last couple of years. Of course, there wasn't the Steph and Sabrina thing like we had last year. And there was no Karl-Anthony Towns in it. There were no Timberwolves in it. Anton said a couple of weeks ago he was asked to participate but declined, which makes sense. That's not the sort of thing. I don't think Ant shooting off a rack is anything like Ant shooting off the dribble or Ant shooting off the catch. But it was fun. I mean, like Buddy Hield, I think he set the record or tied the record with his first round performance. That was fun. And then Tyler Hero barely made it to the finals, but got hot. It was fine. It wasn't the best 3-point contest, but the Hield display and the Hero getting hot to win. And Dame he missed the final because of Hero and did not get a chance to get his 3-peat. So that was fun. The dunk contest was awesome. It was the best one we've had in a while. Mac McClung was amazing. And Stephon Castle gave him a run for his money. Like you never felt like Castle was going to win because McClung got all 50s, but Castle easily had the next best 2 dunks of the night. And you could argue that his best dunk was better than McClung's worst dunk, if you will. But they were all 50s. So that was about as good of a back and forth we've had in a final, probably since Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine, even though you kind of knew McClung was going to win and the Gordon and LaVine one was truly a tie. I don't know. It was fun. Like it was a lot of fun. And McClung said afterwards in the interview immediately that he didn't know if he'd do it again. I'm sure he'll get all kinds of pressure and encouragement, we'll say, from the league to try and get a 4-peat next year. But that was incredible. Like the dunk over the car and the final, like every single one of them was just nuts. I don't know. Besides Zach LaVine and then that Aaron Gordon year, and then obviously Vince Carter, and like who's been better in terms of a dunk contest guy? I don't know that there has been anyone. And then Sunday, the format on Sunday with the tournament style with the Elam ending, I actually liked it. There were a couple rough patches because it still kind of devolves into a 3-point shooting contest. Like I think it was maybe the second semi where like the first, 20 shots were all threes. It's fine. It's fun when like Cat's hitting a logo 3 and Steph's hitting a half court 3. But I think I like it. I think it's the right way to go. And I don't mind the G League competition to get to, or the Rising Stars competition to get your 4th team on Sunday. My only thing is like it messed up the minutes because the coaches are going off of, typically coaches just go off of time, right? Like you normally would. You'd look at the clock and you'd say, okay, this guy's got to get in the game or whatever because he hasn't gotten any clock. Well, what ended up happening was like Şengün didn't play until the final minute, and then he gave up a back cut to lose the game because the dude hadn't played. Like there was no, there wasn't a clock for these guys to figure out their subs. And so like, let's see. Şengün played less than a minute. Trae Young played less than 5 minutes. Pascal Siakam played only 3 minutes. It messed up the ability. Like it's a much shorter game, which is better. Like, playing a full 48, having some of these guys play 30 minutes, it seems unnecessary. But like guys like Şengün, and I remember being a kid and being so psyched to watch Kevin Garnett play because the Wolves were never on national TV and they were always one and done in the playoffs. And so I loved the All-Star game and watching Kevin Garnett play and get, national attention. And, for kids that are Rockets fans that are excited to watch Şengün play and he plays less than a minute, I'm sure that's frustrating. So I think that if they could figure out that piece of it, and I'm not saying it's like a little league rule, like everybody's got to play at least 5 minutes or whatever. But maybe just its coaches paying closer attention. But I like the concept. I think it certainly provided more, like you actually had real play sets being run. Like they were running horde sets and stuff. Like teams were actually trying to run actions to get shots, use their timeouts to call game-winning plays. Like, I thought that was great. And I think it's a step in the right direction for the All-Star weekend. Overall, the Spurs thing kind of hanging over it. Anthony Edwards not being able to play due to the sore groin, which, to be fair, he said if he had more chance to warm up, he probably could have played. So it's not quite the same as LeBron, who LeBron knew that morning he wasn't going to play. Obviously, AD was hurt, and Giannis as well. So, like, those are a little bit different. The LeBron and Ant thing, it stinks. Like, it's too bad those guys couldn't play. I don't know what you're going to do about it, though. Like, it's always part of it. Remember Jimmy Butler suited up and didn't play the year when him and Kat were representing the Wolves, and everybody was mad at Jimmy Butler. It's a little easier to see with Jimmy because of the way Jimmy is. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. But overall, I thought it was a good All-Star weekend. It was better than last year, minus the Sabrina Steph thing was awesome last year. But otherwise, I thought the dunk contest was even better. I thought the game itself was certainly better. There's no question about that. The Rising Stars thing was fun too. So anyway, all right, that's all I got for you today on the show. I'll be back tomorrow. I want to dig in a bit more on some of the offensive stuff and the player grades. We'll do one of those tomorrow. May have a guest here later in the week, and the Wolves don't play again until Friday. So lots of stuff to cover this week. And yeah, appreciate you listening. Appreciate you making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And a reminder, you can sign up to get the daily newsletter at LockedOnDaily.com. You'll get it right to your inbox. All things Wolves, all things NBA, every day, Monday through Friday. Sign up at LockedOnDaily.com. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.